Hello. Welcome to the Masterclass on the Masculine and Feminine. Welcome to the third chapter in the series. We are talking today about the wounded masculine and feminine. It is quite an interesting topic for me, and one personally that I find resonates quite deeply with a lot of the people I speak to in the men's and the women's circles, and one that I really feel owes permission to exist, or at least we owe ourselves permission to accept and acknowledge within us. And I think that this process, as we're expanding and as we're expressing ourselves, is actually to help us promote our own self-understanding. And it's in this balance of understanding instead of what is toxic, but actually understanding what is wounded and what requires our deeper insight and deeper expression. We can truly understand what we need for ourselves. So, welcome back. In the series so far, if you've just joined, we have explored what the different misunderstandings and misinterpretations of the masculine and feminine archetypes are. We have found how they are formed, how they have evolved, and in the last episode, we even brought our attention to the stereotypes and common misconceptions that ripple through generations. They are quite long and extensive, that if you hadn't listened to them before tonight, don't worry, it's okay. They all do flow within each other. So thank you again for joining. And yeah, I really hope that this brings you a deeper understanding for yourself and for others, and that you have the opportunity to learn and grow and heal so that we may all work for our greater good to help others. So what we're going to do in this episode tonight is we will be comparing the healthy masculine and feminine to their shadow sides, the wounded versions of each. The wounded and toxic characteristics of the masculine and feminine both stem from a projected interpretation, but they are different in how they are expressed. What I mean by that is we have learned a lot about what the toxic traits of the masculine and feminine are and how that imbalance has been formed, and also what the projections of those expressions are. A lot of the toxic masculinity and femininity that we'll get into later is very unsettled and requires a lot of external validation and external support. That we'll speak about in a bit. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But what we are discussing tonight is actually the wounded masculine and feminine. What the wounded masculine and feminine represent in us are our deeper traumas in something that we didn't know we understood, simply because of the idea of the wound representing the trauma. In Greek, this idea of really trying to go deeper into what the wounded masculine and feminine represent within you, and how you can use that not to feel any fear or judgment or guilt in yourself, but rather to work on how you can support your growth and understanding. So my intention for this episode specifically is to help you uncover which of these archetypes may be wounded within you, by bringing your attention to different behavioral patterns, reactions, and even ways of being that do not necessarily align with your authenticity. These are moments where you might question your actions, you might question your reactions. You might think of something that happened and, I can't believe I said that, or I can't believe I did that. Why would I do that? These are just expressions of who you are when you don't necessarily feel safe in your surroundings, and as a result you don't feel enough safety to feel vulnerable around the people that you're around, so that authenticity can't come out, it can't express itself freely. And that's when you go into these spaces, you like say a weird joke, or all of a sudden someone says hello and you say I'm fine, and it's a very normal reciprocal thing, and everyone experiences it. And it's those moments where we feel a little bit uncomfortable in our surroundings, that we have the opportunity to reflect on it, and instead of judging ourselves, we have the opportunity rather to learn more about what brings us comfort and what we require in our safe space to feel our most vulnerable, to be able to explore that safely. That's what this Wounded Masculine and Feminine class is going to uncover. In this masterclass, we bring our attention to is our inner world, the inner world being your inside, your heartbeat, your light, your fire, your heart space, and your outer world being the world directly outside of you. You have different levels of consciousness that we can experience the space that we live in, exist in. So in this practice, we're going to go more inner world, which is more feminine. In the practice, a lot of what the masculine contributes to any characteristic, whether it be toxic, wounded, or healthy, the masculine possesses that external expression. So you'll find a lot in the masculine traits that we'll go through, there is actually quite a cool common denominator that you can use that outward expression. You can trust yourself in your instinct, in your surrounding. A lot of what I speak about in these masterclasses is having the instinct as your masculine and having your intuition as your feminine. And the bridge that helps that loop and helps that path is trust. So all of the things that we are practicing and all that we are expressing here is to realign ourselves with what that trust and that balance means to us, so that we can fully align with when we need which one and when to call which one in and why. For today, as I mentioned, we're going to go more into the inner world. We're going to call in the feminine, the deeper understanding, the reflection and the introspection. Let's slowly begin here by getting comfortable. I'd like you to sit in the seat that you are in, however you may be in your space right now, and just close your eyes. Relax your body. Roll your shoulders. Shake out your arms. Release everything that you might have come here tonight with. Clear your mind. And when you're ready, I want you to slowly bring your attention to your breathing. Take one deep inhale through the nose, filling your lungs with air from the bottom all the way to the top, and get to the top of your breath and hold for 1, 2, 3, 4. Now exhale through your mouth, sigh, release all the air, emptying your lungs completely until you get to the bottom of your breath, and you hold for 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale again, filling your lungs with air, taking the deepest breath you've taken the whole day from the bottom to the top, feeling your lungs expand, and you get to the top and hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, release through the mouth, release and relax your shoulders. Feel your body connect to the ground below, to the space you are in. The gentle push of gravity keeping you here in this space, in your heart, in your body. A lot of my teachings emphasize the importance of the present moment, especially when we are seeking guidance. It is in this present moment where everything that is meant for you can arrive. May you find what you are seeking as it is seeking you. Thank you so much. When you're ready, you can slowly bring yourself back. Come join me again. I want you to just get comfortable, grab a pen and paper if you want to. I would love to just open up your space here with that breath work that we practice now, and just sort of give you the opportunity to just let whatever comes flow naturally. If you have any questions to ask along the way, please feel free to comment below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you find everything you are seeking. And this present moment and the space that I'm providing here is so powerful, from whatever stance you're looking at, whether it's live, whether you're watching a recording, but having yourself in a space and reconnecting that mind and body connection, having that body being here, the mind being present, and being able to activate this understanding, this light within you, is a huge part of what the masculine and feminine archetypes are here to help us create. And that balance starts with understanding what they are and what they are not. In my last masterclass, I spoke a lot about Carl Jung's the anima and the animus. He uses each as an understanding of a representation of the masculine and feminine regarding a man and a woman. In the man, the anima is present, the feminine, and in the woman, the animus is present, the masculine. And in both, they represent a specific characteristic trait of each to the child, to the observer. This is where I spoke about in the last class about the misinterpretations and misunderstandings of the masculine and feminine being rippled through generations. But those are now for the toxic traits. I'm now going to go into the wounded traits by giving you a little example here of how a child, as the observer, would create their own understanding. As children, we create our own understanding and relationship to the masculine and the feminine based off of our observations and experiences. We then use our parents specifically as the direct role models of each archetype, the anima and the animus, because they are our closest, most trusted pillars in the time that we are children specifically. In this observation, the child doesn't know anything other than what the parents are teaching, fully trusting and fully vulnerable, completely whatever they say. My mum once told me a story of her one friend didn't have his finger anymore. He had cut it off. He's a chef or something. And I was like 7, and it was like that. And I asked her once, and she said it's because he picked his nose, and there's a monster that lives in your nose. And it was something I believed for such a long time. Now it's a great story, and she's really good at telling stories like that. But this is how easy it is for a child to truly just believe anything you say. They're learning. They are always, always observing. It's such a profound way of teaching, is just by being. And by being in your wounded masculine and feminine, you create a very interesting type of character. In my previous masterclass, I spoke about the stereotypes and misconceptions of the masculine and feminine, and again, how these ripples carry on. A large part of everything that everyone's experiencing in this masculine and feminine imbalance is loneliness. And no one likes loneliness. We are meant to be a community, and we are meant to support each other and help each other so that we may live in harmony, again, not only within but without. In this previous masterclass, with that in mind, that ripple of the generations, I want to share the same practice that I shared the last time with you now, to just slowly use this masterclass to go deeper into your own self-understanding. In an ideal world, Dad would teach his child healthy masculine habits. He would teach his child logic, discipline, determination, analytical skills, body movements, setting boundaries, these external expressions. Mom would then teach the child the healthy feminine, the empathy, the curiosity, how to care for your internal world, your compassion, your emotional regulation, love for yourself and love for others. With Carl Jung's philosophy in mind, as I mentioned to you earlier, the anima and the animus, the representations, I invite you now to take a moment to identify who your parental influences were and how they might have influenced your understanding of what the healthy masculine and feminine are. Who are the first two people in your earliest memories that formed this foundation of thought? And how do you feel this could have shaped your understanding and perception of the masculine and feminine? Very big questions, I know. The big one that I will repeat is, how do you feel this understanding or misunderstanding or misinterpretation even of the masculine and feminine from your versions or references of the anima and animus could have shaped your understanding and perception of the masculine and feminine as you understand it today? Think about how your perception of the masculine and feminine might have been created for you. You now can identify how you were influenced and what blanket of thought you were protected under. You have the opportunity now to reparent yourself, as I mentioned in the last masterclass, and create a safe space in your body, in your heart center, so that you may not be ruled by your experiences, but rather become curious towards the lessons in those experiences. I then wrote here about the ideal world as told by the wounded masculine and feminine. The projections that the parents give to the child become these toxic ideas of the masculine and feminine, the external presentations that I mentioned earlier. These create wounds. The toxicity can create wounds. It's normally quite, unfortunately, how the red flags go. Those wounds lead to this wounded masculine and feminine that we're going to get into now. They lead to not wanting to be the toxic version of each because they understand that they don't want that. They don't agree with that. There's something about that, I don't vibe with that. I see where you're coming from and why you're doing that because I'm an observer. And as your child, I'm your biggest observer. But I also don't want to do that. Your parents have an interesting way of teaching you what to do, but also what not to do. The wounded masculine and feminine are now the children in this story that I've created here that are simply projecting what they need, what they didn't receive in reparenting, and a practice that I'll speak about later called EMDR. The idea behind it is that you go into these past memories, into these wounds, and you learn what else was stuck in that memory of thought for you. You let the emotion guide you through it, and you learn what you needed for yourself in that moment, how you wanted someone to protect you or show up for you or acknowledge you, to hear you, and you embody that in your practices now, in your current state, and heal the past versions of yourself that in shamanism we call them your soul parts, that when you start collecting them again, they bring you back into your wholeness. I have a very interesting way of explaining this, so please bear with me, but I promise it'll make sense. You see, we don't know what we don't know, right? How would we? We believe in what we are taught, and we trust who's teaching us. We give them our vulnerability, our genuine curiosity. For generations, children have been taught what to do and what not to do according to what is deemed correct through societal norms. Don't climb that tree, don't get your dress dirty. There's a lot of don'ts and should be's, not a lot of cans and wills. So as these children grow up and get told what to do and not to do, it unfortunately forces children to move away from their autonomy and grow into the mold of what is expected of them through discipline mostly and fear. These children then grow up and start families of their own. They promise themselves that they will be better and raise their children better based off the principles that they wish were available to them when they were young. being heard, feeling seen, acknowledging me, giving me love, giving me care. These principles are projected wounds that only keep that loop flowing. This is how the wounded masculine and feminine are created. You are now projecting onto the child the things that you wished you had for yourself, instead of giving it to yourself and listening to what the child will need, giving your full attention to whatever the child wants in their autonomy, letting them flow without your projection, but giving them that space that you have learned from because you have given it to yourself, and it feels so good. It feels so nice because you've experienced it. A toxic expression of what each masculine and feminine are not causes the observer to desperately seek their own autonomy. They want to know more because they feel there's more to know, and they want to understand what the masculine and feminine actually are. They go on this search without realizing, of course, that it's the masculine and feminine that they're seeking, but rather the understanding of themselves, that inner balance and harmony. Again, that trust of the instinct and the intuition. The version that they know of the masculine and feminine is not one that they agree with, but because it was taught to them by the ones they trust the most, the observer not only becomes confused in this process of unlearning, and if this is what they taught me and this was wrong, then what else is wrong? And how deep must I go in this search? How deep must I go in this understanding? And where do I begin? It becomes extremely overwhelming. The observer also identifies the masculine and feminine archetypes as the wounds that those toxic traits caused. These wounds are then projected out as a reflection of what they are asking for, what they need for themselves. This is what I said earlier about the EMDR and the soul parts, is often what we are seeking and what we need, we seek externally, but it is what is calling to us internally, to be seen, to be felt, to be experienced, to be heard, to be acknowledged. The idea behind these reflections is that you can understand how much of it you want from others because you haven't quite given it fully to yourself, and you have the opportunity to give it back to yourself, to feel safe in your space, to be vulnerable with yourself, to be gentle and forgive yourself in this process. There's so much else that comes from all of this, but the biggest expression of our own self-understanding is forgiveness and permission. And we don't have to be hard on ourselves for anything along the way. It's quite literally our life's journey, and we have our whole lives. So wherever I meet you on your path, wherever you are on your path, you are growing deeper into yourself. And I hope truly with these masterclasses that you do go back to the others and that they help you in understanding what you need by understanding what you want from others and what is upsetting you, what your expectations might be, where your disappointment lies in others, and working on that projection so that you can bring it back. You can give yourself your energy back and work on healing your inner world. Personally, the wounded masculine and feminine are very deeply rooted for me in my own growth and understanding. I found that, the toxic elements, although they do hold a sense of fire, there was a lot of, with the toxic trait, it's quite an open expression of your wounds. And I think with the wounded traits, the wounded masculine and feminine traits, it's quite an inward thing. These are my wounds, I'm working through them, but I also sometimes maybe don't know that they exist, or maybe I don't want to work through them. I don't know that this is what's happening to me and why my emotions are like this. So I'm just going to use them as my trauma, as my wound, and sit with them because I don't know what else to do with them. Before I go into the characteristics of the masculine and feminine traits, I'm just going to give you a moment here to absorb what we have discussed and to offer you the opportunity to reflect on what you feel you crave from relationships, from friendships, from family, and how much of that is their responsibility, which valid, it is also their responsibility, but how much are they giving to you and how much are you actually giving to yourself first. The wounded masculine and feminine characteristics, similar to what I mentioned about the toxic traits that I'll go through again, but I'm going to show you in these characteristic traits how the one actually complements the other and how they work together, the toxic and the wounded traits. The toxic traits are when these wounds are projected onto others, that external experience that I mentioned, a call for support and guidance rather than need and comfort. The characteristics of the wounded masculine are often characterized by excessive control, domination, and disconnection from their emotions. Some key traits are the victim mentality, which is also common in the feminine. I'll get to that. The victim mentality where life is happening to me, not for me. Unlike the wounded feminine, where you become dependent on others. This victim refuses help, but craves attention and care. So help me, no, don't touch me, I'm fine. It's that confusion in their self because they can't admit to needing that care and attention. They were never allowed to experience that. Another key trait is our suppressed emotions, the belief that emotions are invalid or even misunderstood, leading to emotional repression and disconnection from the heart center, from the feminine. A lot of what I experience in my men's circles is men sharing that they are feeling angry and sad only, simply because they aren't truly aware of the spectrum, the full spectrum of emotions that they can feel, because they've never had the opportunity to identify them and sit with them for long enough. And it's by suppressing these emotions that you're wounding your own understanding, because you're not giving yourself that emotion either. You're completely suppressing it. And you need that emotion. You need all your emotions to guide you and to work through you and flow through you in that inner world, right? From these two, from the victim mentality and the suppressed emotions that I just shared, the third and fourth traits are actually toxic traits that you'll see now work quite well hand in hand with these wounded traits. The first one is overworking and burnout as a toxic trait. The masculine is distracted with hyper-focus and productivity, achievement and competition at the expense of well-being and personal relationships. I'm just going to pause here for a second and share something about the masculine and feminine and the traits that I'm expressing now. It's not a he or a she. This isn't female and male. This is masculine and feminine. This is something that each of you have within you. And it's something that you can identify in these characteristic traits to understand which is wounded, which is toxic, and how you can work on that balance. Going through it again, we have just mentioned the two traits of the wounded masculine, the victim mentality and the suppressed emotions, and now how they lead to overworking and burnout as a toxic trait of the masculine, and aggression and dominance, which is another toxic trait of the masculine, that external expression. An overemphasis on power and control, often resulting in authoritarian behavior and aggressive natures towards others. Not necessarily physical aggression, but verbal and very intimidating. The deeper reflections of these wounds, after understanding the balance of that toxic and wounded characteristic wheel, is isolation and rigidity. It's a tendency toward emotional detachment, hyper-independence, and refusal to ask for help or show vulnerability, even in relationships. Now, these four characteristic traits that I mentioned are almost like the first layers of the onion, and once you peel back those layers, this is the truth. This is your true wound that is calling for you. The isolation and rigidity and the fear of failure. Fear being the theme, because of a world telling you what you should do and then reprimanding you for not enjoying yourself when you're doing it. It's very confusing. A fear of vulnerability and a deep fear of being perceived as weak, leading to perfectionism or avoidance of risks, avoidance of experience and expression. The fear of failure is something that lives within every single individual because of an unrealistic expectation of reality, and it is something that truly, as we work in all these practices, I always remind my clients to just really dive into the culture of your Indigenous life and work on understanding your own self by understanding where you came from, understanding who you are now, how you've molded, how you've grown, and how you can work on believing in yourself to release this idea of failure. You fail what? You can't actually fail. Failing is when you stop believing in yourself. That's all. You have no reason to fear that because you are always going to be with you. You just got to awaken that inner world once again. Those were the characteristics of the wounded masculine. I'm going to go into the characteristics of the wounded feminine now. The wounded feminine is often characterized by passivity, self-sacrifice, and a disconnection from self-worth and personal empowerment. These traits include the victim mentality, once again, becoming dependent on others, relying outward and seeking outward for validation, for approval, for acknowledgement, for attention. You can't actually pull that within you. You have to seek outwards. It's something that's generationally taught to us as women, and something that I encourage as a deep unlearning in these practices, is to give yourself that love, give yourself that validation, give yourself everything you want from others to prove that you are worthy, because you are worthy. You need to believe in you. You cannot fail. The second characteristic trait is overgiving and a lack of boundaries. A pattern of self-sacrifice where the needs of others are prioritized over one's own, leading to depletion, an empty vessel, and people-pleasing. This lack of boundaries and just constantly flowing and giving without understanding also how to refill your cup, or even noticing at least when your cup is empty, is this people-pleasing mentality that is very common in most people, because of that outward validation, that seeking, that victim mentality that everyone experiences. The emotional manipulation now is a toxic trait of the feminine that I wanted to bring in with this. The emotional manipulation comes from that overgiving and lack of boundaries and the victim mentality, and creates a distortion of emotional expression, where emotions are used as a way to control or manipulate rather than a means of genuine connection, because they don't feel safe or trusted in the space that is being set up for them. They are not comfortable to be vulnerable where they are, so they protect themselves, they test. I always think of like a little squirrel, how it like goes in the forest and it's very fast and agile, but it can go on one flow until it needs to think and reassess and protect itself. It's the same process in emotional manipulation. People do it to test because they feel they need to follow an energetic feeling or emotion or intuitive feeling, but because they are disconnected from their emotions, they are actually testing themselves because they can't trust what they truly feel and what their intuition is trying to express to them. Similar to the masculine, understanding these feelings welcomes the flow of your emotions. In the wounded feminine, the emotions can get stuck and lead to projections of self-doubt and insecurity, chronic self-doubt and self-worth, often accompanied by a need for external validation and approval once again. Self-doubt is something I've been actually speaking about very recently, about your body and your mind telling you there's things that you want to practice and work on so that you can stop doubting yourself. The things you doubt are the things that are asked for your attention. And self-doubt and insecurities go hand in hand, because you doubt yourself and you become more insecure, but then you get disappointed in yourself, so you doubt yourself more. You don't ever actually step out of that loop unless you start the thing. It's the most difficult part, is just to start. And in these understandings of the emotions and showing up for yourself and truly working on that self-doubt, whatever it may be, whatever you feel is you are doubting in yourself. I'll give you an example. For those of you who don't know, I am a boxer, and sometimes for my fight, like normally 2 weeks before the fight, I actually get like a lot of self-doubt. I'm like, I'm not good enough. What if she's training more than me? What if she's fitter than me? I maybe need to practice this more. And what the self-doubt is actually teaching you, and what it expressed to me, is you work on your self-doubt. If you feel that your hook isn't strong enough, then go back to the gym and practice your hook. You work on your self-doubt. You work on the things that you are doubting so that you can stop doubting them. That's the point. The second one and the final wounded trait that I'm going to mention tonight is the fear of abandonment. It is a deep feminine wound that actually exists a lot in my generation and generations below me, because of the disconnection that I think a lot of people might have felt in the spaces that they were trying to connect in. They don't necessarily have to be things that happen to you in your childhood. You experience different types of wounds throughout your life, and the wounds, no matter where they're from, hold significant value to you as well as to your healing and your growth. So we must never, ever downplay what we have experienced, because they help us understand ourselves. Everything that you have experienced is valid. The intention here is to simply not sit with your wounds, but to work through them and to grow through them. A lot of what I do in my practice is, when we go into these deeper wounds and deeper traumas, is there is no more fear to be felt. There is no more pain to be felt. That has been experienced. Now, all you're doing is going back and collecting the treasure that you couldn't see at the time because you were focusing, or you were experiencing all that fear and that pain, that you let it go away. Now you can go back. Now you can go back and collect that treasure and change that memory. And that is the final part of this masterclass, is the EMDR therapy that I was talking about. It is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's all similar things, but just in different languages. And that's the whole point of sharing, is that you resonate with specific people in a language that they understand. And combining those different understandings truly give you the opportunity to make your own conclusion, because there is no wrong way of this. It's just about being honest and being true to yourself and being authentic and feeling into what you're experiencing, welcoming in that masculine and feminine flow. EMDR therapy and the practice that I'm going to share with you tonight to try harness in this wounded masculine and feminine, where it comes from, any of those traits that might have, is now a part of practicing going back to those memories, as I mentioned earlier, and understanding and recreating the outcome for yourself. Those moments when you go back and you sit with your 7-year-old self when it needed a hug, and you sit with your 13-year-old self when she needed acceptance, and you show up for yourself in those ways, for that version of yourself, and to give that to yourself now, you are actually following your life's purpose. You are working in your light. Through this practice, you have the opportunity to learn more about yourself, and then share and create a new ripple, a new generational flow of what the healthy masculine and feminine can be. My final thing that I want to share with you tonight is just one last practice to move away from the wounded masculine and into the healthy feminine. is by surrendering. Because of that balance, the wounded feminine calls for the healthy masculine. The wounded masculine calls for the healthy feminine. The wounded masculine needs the support, needs the compassion, needs the empathy. The wounded feminine needs the drive, needs the confidence, needs the determination. So they really do go hand in hand in your own healing process. And by understanding each aspect of them and understanding your own path in this, you can figure out what traits are calling to you and what you can do to open up that deeper understanding for yourself. Healing the wounded masculine and feminine through shamanic practices involves restoring balance between these archetypes, both within oneself and in the external world. The masculine learns to express healthy boundaries, purpose, and action, while the feminine is restored to embody intuition, nurturing, and creativity. When these two archetypes are harmonized, the individual experiences wholeness, personal empowerment, and greater alignment with their higher purpose, their own lights. I'm going to just say that again for you. The masculine learns to express healthy boundaries, purpose, and action, while the feminine is restored to embody intuition, nurturing, and creativity. Where do you feel you can better work at restoring that balance within yourself? Start there. Let that be your guide, and let that be the thought that I leave you with tonight. I would like to say thank you so much for joining. It has been an honor to hold space for you in this way and to share what I know to all who are curious, to all who are seeking, and I truly just thank you for being here with me today. I would like to just ask you to close your eyes, relax your body, put your hands over your heart. Feel the life, the breath beneath your hands, the heartbeats. Visualize the masculine and feminine as they show up for you. Let this be the start of your journey to balance. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. We are closing off. I want to just share my practice and what I do with you before I say goodbye. A lot of what we do in shamanism is we mirror what our clients are sharing with us. Ailments of the body, of the mind, of limitations, of restrictions, of pain, sometimes actually just needing to be heard. And at least in my practice, I offer the opportunity to help you go deeper into your self-understanding and work on your own personal limitations that might be standing in the way of your growth, and also to help you realign that masculine and feminine, however it might be out of place, by also realigning your mind, body, and spirit. It is an incredible practice, and if you are interested, please do send me a message privately. I'll send you more information. I also offer conscious couples. It's a practice where you come with your partner and we work on how to create that masculine and feminine balance in a relationship, as well as what you might be projecting individually on the other and how we can help you move through that to create a more harmonious connection with your partner. This is all a deep type of remembering, and we have a lot of unlearning to do. And that's why I do encourage you to go back and to listen to my other masterclasses and to try and understand a little bit more about the flow. I appreciate all who are listening. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am sending you all my love, and please feel free to ask any questions, to reach out with anything more that you would like to know. I will see you soon. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, and welcome to the beginning. I hope that every step that you take moves you forward in your own path to self-understanding, self-worth, and self-love. Thank you. Bye.